If you're scared about going too deep, then this video is going to be for you. Should you have any questions at all, I encourage you to drop a comment down below. I'll do my best to assist you in the best possible direction. Please don't forget to subscribe and like this video for me. Give this video a thumbs up, as I will be bringing more videos like this for you all. Share it with a friend if you think they'll find it helpful. When it comes to going too deep, this is something that every single artist, especially when we first start out, this is something that we want to avoid, and this is something that probably weighs heavy on all of us. Now, in this video, I want to talk about what that looks like. I'm going to give you a visual example right now, and then I'm going to share with you an exercise that we can use to practically go about avoiding going too deep and getting familiar with where we need to be. When it comes to going too deep, plain and simple, this is very much so what it would look like. It's going to be a little bit different for every artist, but for me and my specific technical application, this right here is going too deep. Now this skin is very thick, so we're not going to be able to tell. However, you can kind of see that I'm riding the tube and I'm driving it in there, even though my hang is that far out. So with my needle hanging that far out, the needle completely disappeared. That right there is essentially, in a nutshell, what it looks like to go too deep right there. Now again, we can't see this being blown out, but if I were to kind of pull the skin apart right here, you can see that this application versus the one on the side of it is completely different. You can see how this application completely cut that fake skin as opposed to the one up top. That right there is a clear sign that we went way too deep right here while applying this line. As a beginner, this can happen easily. I want to share with you a way that we can go about getting familiar with the depth, so that way we know where to deposit ink. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a blank spot right here on my fake skin next to this design right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get familiar with how my needle deposits ink to begin with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover, align my angle here. I'm going to hover my needle up above the skin, and I'm going to see exactly how long it takes for the ink to be deposited. I have healthy ink flow, everything is correct. I'm just paying attention to how long the needle how long it takes for the needle to catch to begin depositing the ink in a clean, solid, consistent, saturated manner. So we pay attention, the first dot is a lot more saturated than the last, but the first dot had a lot more time. Let me go back for some more ink flow here, and then we're going to try this again. So we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to give this some time. Now that was a lot of pulling. That may not have been a good example just because we couldn't really see the needle at work there. So let me do a little better here. So you can see how I'm really leaving it on there, and I wipe away, and you can see that I'm still not accomplishing ultimate saturation. So at that point, I probably would have got into like overworking territory just because my needle was still. If I simply move my needle around just a little bit, like so, like this for example, you can see my needle's catch. I'm giving it enough time to make rounds, which is depositing the ink. I'm going to go ahead and wipe away. I should get more consistent saturated results. As you can see, as anticipated, the results are much more anticipated to be saturated with this method, because I was just simply working the ink into the skin, giving the needle enough time to deposit. So if we play around with this a little bit, and if I do this example and I stay still, you're going to see, although the needles are catching, they're kind of just hitting in the same spot. So there's not really sort of any deposit going on that's going to contribute to any sort of saturation. Although I can see the needles there and I can see something going on, I don't have saturation. I can kind of see each individual needle marks, which is something that I don't want. So I would recommend doing this until you see how long it takes for the needle to catch to the skin. So you can see it's not an instant process. It in fact does take maybe about a second or so, as you can see, for the needles to catch into the skin right around there. And you'll know when they catch into the skin when the needle marks go away and then you see one solid consistent circle. That means all the needles are depositing together at the same time. So knowing how the ink is being deposited by your needles and knowing how deep you actually need to go to reach those deposit layers is going to help you tremendously avoid going too deep. So I would recommend doing this. Maybe do this about 50 to 100 times. I know that may seem excessive, but after those 50 to 100 times, you're going to be much more equipped than you are right now, especially if you're currently struggling right now. I feel like you don't really have anything to lose. So once you get an idea as to how deep you actually need to go, which is not deep at all. So for example, this is just working off the tip of my needle right here. This is driving it into the skin. Tip of the needle, driving into skin. Tip of needle, driving into skin. You get the idea. They're going to be completely different results. And even that, the one where I'm driving into skin, I'm still not producing saturation. Saturation comes with a little bit of technique where we have to give the needle enough time to do its job. So if I'm trying to accomplish a saturated dot, what I'm going to do is let the needle catch and then just make small circular motions like this. I'm going to go ahead and wipe away. And you can see I'm accomplishing a saturated dot. If I need to go back over, I will go ahead and do so. But that is the idea right there. Now, hopefully from this little demonstration right here, you can kind of see that the needles aren't catching and opening the skin instantly. It is a bit of a process. It does take a little bit of time depending on the needles that we are using for the needles to do what they need to do. It is important to understand this variable right here. This right here is going to give you the information that you need to help avoid going too deep. Once you've done this and once you know how the needle deposits, once you know how to work off just the tip of your needle and get saturation, now we can move on to the next part where we're creating lines. So for example, you can see that I have this area right here that I'm going to go ahead and line, and I'm going to use this for this demonstration to get my points across. Now that I'm more equipped with knowing how ink is deposited, now I'm more equipped with knowing what going too deep actually is. I'm going to go ahead and use that information here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start right here. You're going to notice I'm going to let my needle catch. I'm going to give it enough time to do what it needs to do, keeping a consistent needle depth. I'm not going too deep. You can see that my needle is just depositing cleanly and just fine, no issues at all. And this is how I'm going to go about getting clean results while preventing trauma to the skin. This is a technique that I'm going to go about using when I apply lining. This right here is how I go about preventing going too deep. It's just simply knowing what going too deep is and feels like and looks like. Allow me to go ahead and wipe away. And you can see that I'm getting clean, solid, consistent results. If I go like this, you can see that this technique is nothing like this one over here. This going too deep is where it kind of just rips on its own. You can see although the fake skin does behave with minor rips, as it is, a rubber silicone felt material, it doesn't heal. You could really see the difference. So going too deep is much more apparent. Let me go ahead and repeat that one more time here. So preventing going too deep really is a matter of just ongoing learning and knowing better. It's something that we have to go through and not around. We have to know how the needles work. We have to know how it's going to deposit. We have to be comfortable with the gear that we are using. There are so many moving components that it's not just about not going too deep. There's a lot of other variables to be considered. Here's one more time right here. So you can see I'm starting right here. I'm just going to use a very, very tip of the needle, giving it enough time to do its part. I need the needle to do its job. I'm going to bring it around as fluidly and cleanly as I can. Still working off the very tip of the needle. I'm not driving it into the skin. I'm moving at a consistent pace because I want to accomplish ultimate saturation as well. I want my lines to be powerful and read cleanly. And then I'm going to bring this around with a taper out like so. I'm going to dab away, put some ointment, and you can see that this process is proven to work as I am getting clean, solid, consistent, saturated results, and I'm not cutting up the skin in any way, shape, or form. You can see that going too deep is going too deep. That right there is something that we can't hide. When it comes to going too deep, I really feel like there's no way around it but through it. I feel like knowing what going too deep is the best way to not go too deep. And a good way to figure out what going too deep is and to get comfortable with it is, again, just to use the very tip of your needle. Just leave it there. And do this on fake skin, of course. Don't do this on human skin or yourself. It's not really necessary. So you can kind of see that the needle actually does take time to deposit ink into the skin. It's not an instantaneous process as we may assume and or think. Keep in mind, I am using a 9-round shader, so the 9-round shader is going to need a little bit more time than, say, a 3-round liner, but the rule of thumb still would apply to pretty much any needle that we are using. They still need time to do their part. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to use that sort of knowing. Okay, I understand this right here is a good depth because if I move, I can see the ink's already being deposited. So I can work with that. I'm going to start right here. I'm going to keep that depth there, keep it around. Make sure my angle is correct. Posture position, align hand speed to voltage. Make sure I have adequate ink flow. And you can see that the entire way I'm just going to work off the very tip of the needle, ensuring that I deposit the lines as cleanly as I can. Just like so. I'm going to go ahead and dab away, use a little bit of ointment, wipe away, and those results are fantastic. I'm happy with those results. I get clean, solid, consistent, saturated results that are not only nice and powerful, but they reflect the line weight that I am using, which is also very important. Let me give you a quick last example here of what going too deep is. Maybe I can give you a side-by-side comparison after this. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can tell by applying that there that was way too deep. If I were to do the fake skin bend, we should be able to see that the area that was way too deep is far more cut than the area that's not. So if I kind of just bend this a little bit, you can see that the areas where we go too deep just have a natural trauma look to them far more than the areas where they were technically applied. Keep in mind, even the technically correct areas have a little bit of trauma is what it looks like in slicing, but that's only because we are using a silicone felt fake skin. However, you can see that the amount of trauma that the fake skin is demonstrating here is significant in the areas that we went far too deep. It's important as the artist to remember that this right here is 110% avoidable should we just keep going with that ongoing learning, should we just get familiar with the fundamentals, should we become equipped with knowing how our equipment and how our needles are depositing ink into the skin. Do this exercise right here over and over and over until you get a good understanding as to how ink is being deposited. From there, you can then use that information to align your hand speed to your voltage, figure out your needle angle, and all of those other fundamentals that are going to take your lining to the next level. That right there will be it for me and going too deep. That's an exercise that you can go ahead and utilize on your end effective immediately to resolve any issues of you going too deep. Should you have any questions at all, I encourage you to drop a comment down below. I'll do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. Don't forget to thumbs up this video for me and share it with a friend. If you found this video helpful and you think it can help someone else, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well and ring that bell, as I will be bringing more videos like this, and I would greatly appreciate your support. With that being said, thank you for your time. I appreciate you watching. You have a great day.
I know that what we have is love, and I won't take you for granted, and I won't take advantage. I'm grateful we don't give up. Have patience, our best is yet to come.